I'd like to welcome you all here tonight on behalf of our partners, the Chebeague Cumberland Land Trust, the Prince Memorial Library, the Cumberland Sustainability Subcommittee, which is part of the Lands and Conservation Commission, and the Chebeague Climate Action Team. Thank you for joining us this evening in person, and those of you who are watching on video will also be recording, so you'll be able to watch this again if you want to. I'm Penny Asherman. I'm the Executive Director of the Chebeague Cumberland Land Trust, and I'm here to introduce the series that we've been working on this year. It's called Weathering Climate Change: Understanding Shifts in Our Local Landscapes. And it's a series of 8 walks and talks aimed at engaging community members around local climate issues that are impacting us all. Some of the talks are online, some of them are taking place in person, like tonight, and then some will also be out on the land. So during the series, we've already learned about our changing weather, our coastline, and the waters of Casco Bay, and how our birds and marine populations are adapting to climate change. And coming up next, we have an event June 22nd at Rhines Forest, and that will be talking about the resiliency of our forests with Sally Stockwell from Maine Audubon and Shane Dugan, who is our district forester. And then in July, we have another outdoor event at Longwoods Preserve to talk about the role of our local farming industry in sustainable agriculture. But tonight's event is the 5th event in our series, and it's all about local climate action being taken by our municipalities, our schools, and our nonprofits, and what we can do more collectively as a group to make a difference. This is an opportunity to learn from each other about all the amazing work that's been happening in our towns. We have a lot of dedicated and smart people with different skills who've been working to improve our climate. And there's a lot to be positive about, and although we have more work to do. So throughout the evening, we'll be providing ways also for all of you to get involved in what's happening, and also what you can do individually. So I just wanted to start out by saying we are making a difference already. We're focused on priorities, and we're looking forward to more successes. And we appreciate your help. We all need to work together. And so I hope that we'll learn from each other tonight and ways that we can work together in the future. So first up tonight, we're going to hear from Denny Gallaudet. Denny is a member of the Cumberland Lands and Conservation Commission. He's chair of the Sustainability Subcommittee, which authored a 2-part climate action plan for the town of Cumberland. He's also on the MSAD 51 school board. He's a busy guy. So tonight he's going to cover climate actions for the town and also the school district. Then we'll hear from Maya Stivich. Maya is a climate resiliency fellow with the Greater Portland Council of Governments, and she's been working with the town of Chebeague Island's Climate Action Team on their climate action plans. And then I'll address the role of land conservation in providing natural solutions to climate change. And then at the end, we'll have a discussion and questions and answers, so we encourage you to participate. Denny?
So hello, folks. I know many of you and neighbors, other members of the Conservation Commission, and it's great to have you here. I'm really was happy that Peggy asked me to talk about this particular issue of what we're doing in Cumberland because, well, Pete sometimes accuses me of being too optimistic about climate change, but I can only be optimistic about what we've accomplished to date. It has really exceeded my expectations. I began kind of my climate journey about 10 years ago thinking, wow, this is really a big problem. And how are we going to, what can we possibly do? And so in 10 years, what we have accomplished in our community has been remarkable, as I think you'll see. and a lot of good things going forward. So let me just tell you about it. We developed a written climate action plan, which was prepared for the Council and the Board of Directors and was approved in 2021. And this turned out to be a major step that I would recommend to other communities to follow the process and have the political authority approve your plan. Because since we've done that, you know, people lose interest or say, well, why are we doing that? And you can always refer back to the original climate action plan that the town council approved and the school board. So it's been very helpful and was unanimously done in March 2021. Now, I want to just show you this overview because the climate problem is quite complex. It's taken me a long time to kind of get the various pieces. And the best graphic that I have found is this one, which talks about the Global Climate Council, Global Climate Cycle, and all of its moving parts. And what we do here in our climate is a couple of the parts, but it's important to think of the system as a whole. This is by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So what you see here is the two sinks that sink carbon from the atmosphere, and one is the ocean. So there's a net flux. These arrows down is the fact that CO2 is being drawn from the atmosphere into the ocean, dissolved there, which is part of the natural cycle and has always been that way. Also, which is going to be a big feature of our discussion, is the natural systems in the world. The forests, the salt marshes, are also very large. Notice that the net land flux, this is in gigatons if you're into that sort of math, but it's equivalent to the ocean. So the forests are tremendously important. And we have a lot to talk about here. And then here's what's going up into the atmosphere. And this is fossil fuels being consumed and land use change. I'll have more to say about that. And the issue is since about probably 1950 or so, this went into a plus. That is to say, we were emitting more CO2 from these fossil fuels and net land use change than the oceans and the natural systems could take down. So that's why the carbon has been increasing in the atmosphere. And so what we need to be doing here, well, we need to be doing a lot of things. And there's actions going on everywhere, but of course, trying to mitigate fossil fuels, the burning of fossil fuels, and there's a lot of good pathways that have since opened up since 10 years ago. Land use change, I'll talk about again. There's a lot that can be done there. It's not all suburban housing development by any stretch. 75% of this is agriculture. And cutting down trees and forests, mostly now in the tropics, to provide more space to grow food. And then over here, things are being done to improve the productivity of the forests, and we do a lot of that right here in our town. And the state of Maine is has a very strong position here because our forest cover is 90%. So the forest is extremely important to the Maine's climate action plan. I just would highlight one thing that happens here, an intersection, is that this is where lands can be conserved or well managed, and so we can increase the flux here, and we can avoid land use change, and that's what conserving lands is all about. It's having a smart growth. But globally, it's actually increasing food supply. And so one of the problems that we're working on now, and I'll be talking about, is the issue of food waste. 10% of the global emissions of carbon are due to food waste. That is food that's grown and not eaten and thrown away. And it's a problem here in our community. It's in our school cafeteria, and so it's a big number, and the kind of food that you eat. one startling statistic that I just came across the other day is that if all of the humans suddenly decided to eat vegan, what percentage of agricultural lands do you think we could give up if that choice was made? Anybody care to take a guess? How much demand on our agricultural lands would be diminished if we just decided to all eat vegan?
I don't know, all the meadows with the cows.
Yeah, we're just not eating 75%. By a dietary change on the part of the human species. So it's a big, that whole area is really interesting to me. We're just starting to learn more about it in our community. Let's see, I need to, okay. So the baseline for Cumberland, I'm speeding up a little bit here. We did this in 2015, and in our community as a whole, we have 66,000 tons per year of carbon emissions. And by sector, you'll see that only 1% is the town itself, the little 1%, what we do for town, you know, picking up the trash and public works. 7% is the school, mostly heating its buildings, and 13% is the commercial sector. So the balance, 80% is just people living here, individual residents. So the actions that individual residents take is extremely important to success in our, and this is not true of Portland, but it's true of communities like ours, where it's basically the people who live here in single-family homes and what can be done. And we have a pathway for that I think you'll find interesting. Where it comes from is 44% is heating. Most of our heating is fuel oil. And then 4% is waste, 15% is electricity, and 37% is travel. That's mostly automobile travel. This number is slowly going down, this 15%, because in the state of Maine, we have enacted a statute, the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which by 2030, the electricity that you buy from the grid or Central Maine Power will be 80% carbon free. We're just changing the mix. And that was enacted by the legislature, and it's the most forward-thinking RPS standard in the nation, actually. And we're making great progress. We're at 55% now, and we have a lot of renewable resources here in our state, hydro and increasingly solar. I don't know if you saw in the paper today that Aroostook County, by virtue of the solar farm development up there, is now carbon neutral in its electricity. All of the electricity in Aroostook County is generated by solar power, which, you know, I've been there quite a few times when I was in business, and I thought probably not the first in line, but there they are. So that's exciting. So a couple of the highlights of our approved climate action plans is to conserve 30% of Cumberland's land by 2030. And that's been approved by the town council. So it's something we're going to, I'll show you a little bit about progress there, but that's a goal. Build new public buildings to a zero carbon standard. That's very much in the mind of the school board that I sit on regarding this new school, if the bond issue were to pass and be successful. The goal there is to have that new building be zero carbon emissions, which can be done amazingly. This has been the advances in the last 10 years, is that builders can actually do this by better insulation and better air circulation, better windows, and that'll be part of the new school. Yeah, I would maybe encourage you, if you have questions as I fly, let me know, and I'll repeat it here so you don't have to come up.
What does line 1 mean, conserve 30%
Yeah.
of the land?
That is to have Cumberland's land in some form of conservation plan, whether it be a conservation easement that CCLT does, whether it be open space that comes out of our new zoning ordinance. And we count, not everyone will, but I think it's fair, we count tree growth in there, which we have about 1,800 acres in tree growth. So that means about 4,000 acres that needs to be under conservation. I'm jumping ahead of myself, we're already at 24% of that, so of the 34. So that's what it means, Pete. That our community deploys heat pumps for space heating, either to sit on top of an oil furnace or to go whole house. Adopt EV or PHEV, which are plug-in hybrids, automobiles, light trucks, and school buses. The school district is very, very committed to having electric school buses. And right now, the costs are too high, but the Department of Education in Maine is working on ways to bring that down to, so the goal, I know of Jeff Porter and others, are to have that fleet be electrified as soon as possible. I wanted to just mention here hybrid vehicles. And I have some experience with this. I've been driving an electric vehicle myself for 10 years, and my wife drives a hybrid vehicle, Prius. And recently she had a trade-in, so she got the plug-in hybrid. And those two, the all-electric and the plug-in hybrid, are almost the same in terms of their carbon emissions. Electricity is somewhat better. But I think it's remarkable to me how the automobile industry, particularly the Japanese, have been able to respond to the need for low carbon by using the hybrid and plug-in hybrid technique. And for people in Maine, I sort of feel that, myself, that the plug-in hybrid is maybe a better choice because we have some long drives, it's a cold winter, but you can reduce your carbon emissions driving almost as much as an electric vehicle. So we don't have to, we have options there. Decrease food waste through composting. I'm going to be coming back to that. And also integrate sustainability principles into the K-12 curriculum. That's been ongoing. The kiddos from first grade up are learning about climate impacts and what can be done and getting familiar with the science. And I attended a presentation by a science high school project exit on their project for this 4 people. What project was to add advice to the curriculum, development of the curriculum, which was very effective. They said, it needs to be more positive. We don't want to hear bad news. We got to. So the kids are very engaged. We had, and so it's fun to be dealing with them at the school board level. So here are actions taken. I'm going to just do 3. 24% of Cumberland's land are conserved so far. And that is really impressive to me because 30% is a pretty high bar. And I put this chart up here because there are multiple pathways that this is happening. And this shows all of them. So CCLT projects, they've been, yeah, go ahead.
Does that include Watson Woods yet?
Sorry?
Does that include Watson Woods? The one that CCLT
The 24%, the question is, does the 24% include the Watson Woods project? No, it does not yet. And so that's, to go from 24 to 30% is another 800 acres. The Watson Woods is almost 88 acres, so that's 10% of that right there. So that's why I'm optimistic that we're going to get there by 2030. So CCLT projects, and on this chart here, there's several examples. This, the Carly Grant Woods here. The town owns the land, but CCLT has the conservation easement on Rhines Forest. And this is the Reed property that's not on this chart, but that's filling in this blank, which is a CCLT project. And here is the Watson project all down here. So that's an example of CCLT's actions on the landscape. Also, here's an example of how the conservation subdivision ordinance works. This is an old one, but it is the same objective. This is the Idlewood subdivision, and 50% of that land is left open in return for a smaller lot size. So if you drive in there, the lot sizes seem smaller, but and you don't even notice it from the street. You have the salamander pond, and so it's an example of a really, I think, nifty I guess, example of how the way land is zoned can make a big difference. Over here is, on this corner, the Merrill Forest. This is actually owned by another conservation outfit called Maine Woodland Association. And they have about, I think that's about 100 acres of land that they manage actively as a forest. They manage it sustainably, but they're going to have regular harvests in there. And they had one about 5 years ago. You can probably remember the log pile that they created there. They took a lot of wood out. And a very interesting, if you're interested in good forestry techniques, they use one called cut to length, which is a very environmentally beneficial way to cut wood. The sunny field excuse me, well, there was another one up there, but. So actions taken, we completed our landfill solar farm a couple years ago. Those are the bars on the landfill. And that is now generating 100% of the electricity used by the town. And we're about to buy it outright after 6 years. And so the electricity cost in the budget will go to zero in the town of Cumberland. And everything that these lights and so on and so forth are all, that electricity is run by carbon-free solar farm. Now notice that there's quite a bit of extra room available. I haven't talked to the town council about this, but this is just the geography because this is the landfill itself. And then down in here are all lands which are part of the town forest, but they're not productive for woods at all. They're so-called scantic soils, so they just grow invasives pretty rapidly and also Phragmites. And so other projects like the one by Maine Standards down at the bottom of Tuttle Road there, that's on this kind of soil. So there's a possibility as we grow, or the school would need extra whatnot, there's room to grow. So that's another action taken as the town has begun to adopt EVs and an electric lawnmower here that you see, which we got with a grant, which is out running. And it's using EVs for the cars that the code enforcement officer needs to drive around and whatnot, exploring that technology. Now, this is my next to last slide, but the plan calls for a pathway to carbon neutrality by 2050. And this is for the household sector. Remember that big pie chart of 80%? And here's how we believe that the household sector can get there. In fact, they can go past carbon neutrality and become climate positive, where the residential sector would be sequestering more carbon than they're actually using. And the big steps are heat pumps. That would take about half the carbon emissions out of this mix. That's suggesting that estimating about 80% of the heating by 2050 is done by heat pumps. I noticed that in most new construction now, it's only heat pumps. They're whole house heat pumps, new construction in town. So, and we're finding that that's coming along way faster than we thought. We have about, Bill Longley keeps track of that for us as it comes in because they have to permit. So we're getting about 200 households, a year that are adopting heat pumps, which is about 10% of our households per year. So that should come along, quicker than 2050. The next one would be high efficiency vehicles. I mentioned just naturally moving up to more highly efficient cars, whether they be EVs or hybrid type cars. Another one that we're having fun with is we call low carbon landscaping. So 30% of the area of the town of Cumberland is in lawns as our residential. So what goes on with those lawns has a big impact. And if you drive around town, you'll see that some people actually tend to grow a lot of trees or whatnot around their house, and others don't. So what we've been doing, and it's part of our Lawn Goes Wild thing at the library, was how would a homeowner, what would they do in their home to improve the carbon sequestration of the 2 acres that they own. And it's about, not keeping the actual the mown part fairly small if it works with your family, so the kids can play baseball or whatnot. And consider letting the rest become more naturalized, maybe planting some native shrubs, trees, and it's surprising the impact that an individual homeowner can have. The typical homeowner has a carbon emission in our town of about 12 tons a year. And moving to sustainable landscaping would subtract three tons. So it's 1/4 of your carbon emissions could be affected. I mean, this is, I'll give you the detail later. But so we're trying to help people understand if that would be fun, and not trying to force it on anybody, but it's an interesting idea, particularly when you mix it in with native species and the resilience there. And then the other one, getting more solar PVs and food waste. Just going to finish up with the food waste, which we're just starting to study. So I mentioned that 10% of the carbon emissions are associated with food waste in the world, and 30 to 40% of the food in Cumberland is thrown away, and it goes over to eco-main as burned up. So the first idea is, well, let's not burn it up. Let's turn it into compost. So we have garbage to garden, and you'll see more of that where it'll be available as it is in Falmouth and elsewhere for people to drop off their food waste. But the most important thing is as regards the impact there is not necessarily composting, but having less of it. Because if I mentioned, having less of it is like kind of going vegan, you're taking that demand for food out of it if you don't waste it, and that can ripple through and put less pressure, for beef growing down in Brazil. So we're been interested in following the model of Vermont, where at some point you just won't be able to throw away your food waste into the trash, and you have to find something else to do with it. And the idea would be that would cause people to waste less food. Kind of draconian, so it'll take some discussion, I'm quite sure. But the Maine legislature tiptoed into it, if you might have noticed this year, by putting a time frame on it for restaurants and whatnot. So that's the food waste is an extremely important thing, and one that everyone can get into. So how to get involved? We would invite you to come to our monthly LCC meetings. They're held right here around this table. Anybody's welcome to come and listen to what we're talking about. And we appreciate people coming and listening. Always happy to answer questions, because we've got a number of things going on in addition to this. We have the community orchard that we're doing. We have the trail system that everybody is involved with. So I hope you come, and if you're have a question about this area, just come and we'll try to answer it. Check out Efficiency Maine for home heat pumps. They have a very good program there, and you can learn all you need to know about heat pumps from them. Test drive an EV PHV. I just took delivery of a Ford Lightning pickup truck. I turned in my 2005 Silverado, which is 4-wheel drive. And the difference is pretty striking, I can tell you. I mean, that was a bumpy ride, and putting it into 4-wheel drive, grind. And I got 16 miles a gallon. And now, of course, it's all electric. And the technology is very beautiful. It's all-wheel drive. So there's an electric motor on each axle with a battery underneath, and that's it. So it's equivalent to a 4-wheel drive pickup truck, and cheaper than the F-150. Actually turned out to be cheaper than the club cab 4-wheel drive with a gasoline engine, the Ford Lightning. So they're fun to drive. They're quiet and super quick. Cut back on food waste. We've talked about that, and eat more vegetables. So. Okay. Let's get this off for you. Hey, Maya.
I'm going to be talking about the Chebeague Climate Action Team and our recent work and some ways that you can get involved. Okay, so the Community Resilience Partnership is a state program through the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future, which aims to support community efforts to reduce greenhouse gas or GHG emissions and improve resilience to climate change. And the map on the left shows all the communities in Maine participating as of 2022, I believe. So through the Community Resilience Partnership, Chebeague was able to get a $50,000 community action grant for the following projects: a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, a groundwater sustainability study, a climate vulnerability assessment, and then as kind of a fourth, not a project exactly, but some ongoing community outreach surrounding all of these projects. So I'll begin with the greenhouse gas inventory. A GHG inventory is an estimate of greenhouse gas emissions produced by activities within the community. And CCAT was interested in conducting this inventory for a few reasons. First of all, this is the first inventory of its kind on Chebeague, and not many island communities have done GHG inventories in general. So this inventory, which uses data from 2021, provides a great baseline for future comparison. The inventory also helps us understand where emissions are coming from on Chebeague, what actions we might be able to take to systematically reduce emissions on the island most effectively, and what specific goals we can set for emissions reductions. And so I have this graph here on the right. It might be hard to see. So the yellow category at the top is the share of emissions on Chebeague in 2021 coming from waste. Under that, in blue, is transportation, and then in orange is heating, and then at the bottom green is emissions from electricity. So as you can see, emissions are fairly evenly distributed between these sectors. Obviously, the bulk of the bulk of emissions came from the transportation sector in 2021, and then from heating after that. And that's actually kind of good news for Chebeague in a way. There's a lot of easy ways to reduce emissions from transportation and heating, like encouraging folks to ride bikes or walk more often, or things like having a electric bus service on the island, and encouraging heat pump installations, etc. So the next project is the groundwater sustainability study. This is far from the first of its kind on Chebeague. There have been several groundwater studies in the past in 1998, 1997, 2001, and 2005. These studies, from a logistical standpoint, it's just good to have an updated, complete record of wells on the island. And of course, that information is also needed for the study itself as well. But groundwater studies also help the town make municipal planning decisions, for example, around zoning and housing density, and to make sure that the island isn't pulling an unsustainable amount of water from the aquifer. And the groundwater study also assesses groundwater pollution on the island from things like septic failure, saltwater intrusion, and other pollutants, including road salts and pesticides. So the sampling and testing for this study was done last summer, and then the kind of like database management, mapping, analysis, and report process is in progress, and that's something that I'm working on with the Chebeague Climate Action Team. So even though we haven't done a lot of that analysis yet, we do have the results in from the study, and there was not a lot of evidence of septic failure on the island. Homeowners that were impacted have been contacted, and that happened kind of a while ago at this point. And then there's, I believe, not evidence that saltwater intrusion has gotten much worse since 2005, which is great news for the island. So the final project is the climate vulnerability assessment, which is an assessment of both environmental and socioeconomic climate-related risks on Chebeague. So environmental risks include things like salt marsh migration, coastal erosion, shifting habitats, and sea level rise. And socioeconomic risks include impacts to Chebeague's economy and maritime heritage, housing, food security, health concerns, and social equity. So obviously these are very interconnected. For this project, CCAT is working with FB Environmental, a small consulting firm based in Portland. We worked with them to write up a summary of all of the existing data and reports and articles that we could find pertaining to climate risk on Chebeague. So that's information coming out of Chebeague itself and then also on the county, regional, and state level. We're also using resources from the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, particularly their working waterfront inventory template, to inventory Chebeague's working waterfront resources. And then another part of this is meetings and mapping exercises with the Coastal Waters Commission to get a sense of the current state of Chebeague's working waterfront and how it might have changed in recent decades. So a big part of the climate vulnerability assessment and any discussion of the working waterfront is to talk about the town's infrastructure and how it might be impacted by climate change and sea level rise and storm surges. Chebeague is lucky in a sense. There's not as much public infrastructure at risk on Chebeague compared to other coastal communities in Maine. So this map shows how different areas of the island will be impacted under different scenarios. The yellow roads are the public roads. The roads in white are private, and then the blue shows different inundation scenarios. So the darkest color is areas that are inundated or would be at risk of inundation from a highest annual tide. And then the lightest color is areas that would be at risk of inundation from the most rare possibility of a Category 2 hurricane coinciding with a high tide or a highest annual tide. And the areas at risk of inundation are highlighted in red. So a lot of the at-risk roads are low use or private, not all of them. But the most significant piece of infrastructure on Chebeague at major risk from sea level rise and storm surges is the stone wharf. So the figure on the left shows estimated inundation extent on the stone wharf under different scenarios. In the most extreme case of that Category 2 hurricane coinciding with a highest annual tide, this figure on the top right shows that the pier and road could be inundated up to 600 feet inland from the edge of the pier. And this is a picture from the January 13th storm showing the pier is completely underwater. So this is obviously a huge concern. The wharf is essential for regular and safe transit on and off the island. A 2022 assessment showed that the pier is physically stable, but improvements such as increasing the elevation of the pier surface, widening the pier, and improving the foundation supports are still going to be critical in the long term. So I'm going to move away from the grant activities for a minute and talk about some other things that the Climate Action Team has done or is involved with. CCAT was able to install a Hohonu tide gauge at Chandler's Wharf using a Shore Up grant from the Island Institute and then input from NOAA and the Gulf of Maine Research Institute as well. And we're hoping to install an informational panel next to the tide gauge for people curious about the instrument, or if folks are standing on the wharf waiting for the ferry, they can learn what this is doing. And that's in draft form, so hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that soon. But the tide gauge provides real-time data, and then also, oh, I'm sorry that this is covering the words, but it also creates a historical record of tides on Chebeague. So this is a screenshot of the data that it captured on January 13th, and the observed tide here is a 14.6 foot tide compared to the NOAA forecast of, let's see, it's actually kind of, 11.2 feet. So it's a pretty cool instrument, and you can look this up and check it at any time. The Climate Action Team has also been involved in solar energy planning for the town. There's a solar array on Chebeague near the town garage, and it's managed through a power purchase agreement or a PPA with Revision Energy. So basically the array generates credits which are used to reduce the cost of CMP utility bills. And Revision receives these credits and then sells them back to the town at a discounted price. And this is very common practice in US solar. It allows host customers to participate without as much upfront capital. It reduces the customer's electricity costs, and it also makes it more financially feasible for the solar developers to build more arrays. But the town of Chebeague has started to consider the option of buying the array from Revision. And so CCAT has been researching that possibility and meeting with Revision representatives to provide some advisory input to the select board. So going back to that final kind of long-term grant activity of community engagement, this is the last piece of the grant, and these photos are from a CCAT event that we had in March. It was kind of a poster session type format. We had informational posters around the room on different CCAT projects. We also had some FEMA tide panels, which were a big hit, as you can see. And then we had a presentation from an Efficiency Maine representative on rebates for heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, home weatherization, and electric vehicles. There's been a few other CCAT events. We gave a presentation as part of the Dessert and Discussion series on Chebeague in February. There was a community breakfast last year, and we're in the process of scheduling and developing events for the summer. So some ways to get involved in CCAT. First and foremost, we have CCAT meetings approximately once a month. The most recent one was last night, but if you're looking to come to the next one, it's going to be in only 2 weeks instead of 4 on June 5th, I believe. And details about this are posted on the town website and on the Ferry town board. You can also check out the CCAT website. If you just Google Chebeague Climate Action Team, it will come up. We have upcoming events posted on there, as well as resources, including PDF versions of all of the posters that we had at the March event. And then we also encourage folks to look into more sustainable modes of transit on and off the island, and to look into those home energy improvements and Efficiency Maine rebates. They have some really great options. And then upcoming summer events are to be announced soon, but there's a few that I can talk about. We're having a community wildfire event on June 27th. And we're going to have a presentation from Kent Nelson, who works for the Maine Forest Service, and then also have a community fuel cleanup event either that day or at some other point in the summer. We're still ironing out the details of that, but the date is set, so that's really exciting. And then there is also a kids event on August 4th, I believe. It's a Make Way for Ducklings event with the Halcyon String Quartet, which is a really great climate-focused musical group. So they're going to be on Chebeague in August for that. And then there's a few other things very much in the works, but we'll be posting details about that wherever we can, and hope to see you there. Thank you. Let's see.
Take a question.
Do you want to answer a question?
Sure, yeah.
How much has the sea level risen?
So the question was, how much has the sea level risen? That is a great question. I believe the number that's in my head that I should really double check is 7.5 inches since. I can check that for you while you're speaking and then come back to it. But yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
The Chebeague aquifer,
Mm-hmm.
is that the same aquifer as we have on the mainland, or is it have its own?
No, it's its own. So Chebeague isn't officially designated as a sole source aquifer, but that means that everyone on the island is getting their water from the same source. And if there's contamination in some part of the aquifer, it puts the aquifer at large at risk of contamination. So there is an official designation for that. Chebeague hasn't done that yet, but it is a sole source aquifer, so it's not connected to the mainland. Yeah.
Yeah, on the transportation emissions, does that include the ferry?
I can pull up the table that breaks all of this down as well if you'd like. Yeah, why don't I do that, and I'll find some more details for you while you're talking.
That's one of my
Yes.
Maybe this will be an easy one. So the vulnerability assessment, did it look at anything other than like the infrastructure, the roads, the aquifer? Did it look at anything else like coastal erosion or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm just repeating it for the mic. The question
Maya,
was.
could you repeat the question a little bit? Could you just repeat the question so the audience can hear it?
Yeah. So the question was, what does the vulnerability assessment include, and does it include coastal erosion? And the answer is yes. That's also something that's still in progress, but yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive assessment that we're still working through with FBE. Yeah, thank you all for the questions. Any more?
You'll have another chance. Okay, now we get to talk about natural solutions. The Chebeague Cumberland Land Trust has permanently protected 1,200 acres in Cumberland and on Chebeague Island. We work with private landowners. We work with the town of Cumberland and the town of Chebeague to conserve land with conservation easements, and in some cases, we own our own land and manage it. We've been working to do this for 37 years in our two communities, and we've been focusing on protecting the most critical natural resources. And now we're focusing on connecting the parcels that we've already protected and expanding upon those parcels. And we're also stewards of these lands, so we work with landowners to manage their lands in sustainable ways. Natural solutions are part of the climate change discussion. Land conservation is an important piece of the puzzle, and we can't just rely on technology to bail us out. Natural solutions can be really effective and also one of the most cost-efficient ways to address climate change. The state and the towns have identified land conservation goals in their climate action plans, and so they're working with local land trusts to make sure that we're meeting that 30% goal, which is definitely difficult to meet, but we're well on our way to doing that. These are some of the important ways that land conservation mitigates the effect of climate change, and I'll go through each of these with slides. So the first one is creating connected wildlife habitats. So with the changing environmental conditions and a warming climate and increased development, this threatens the health of wildlife populations. Large blocks of protected land give plants and animals the opportunity to adjust to the shifts in the climate, providing additional food and water, nesting areas, and protection from predators. Some of our examples is Knight's Pond and Ryan's Forest in Cumberland are part of a 2,000-acre conservation corridor from Windham through Falmouth, through Cumberland to North Yarmouth. And that's super exciting because to have that in the greater Portland area means that we're really working hard to make some of this happen. The towns, the land trusts working together, and we're competing against developers who want to develop these lands. So having this corridor, conservation corridor, also a recreation corridor, which benefits us all, is really important. And now we have a new project that's actually being worked on in that corridor, so we'll hopefully be adding 79 more acres into that corridor. We also have protected a core forest habitat in the center of Chebeague Island, and we're also working on a project to expand that as well. So these are the kind of things that we've been focusing on. Storing carbon and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So healthy landscapes and ecosystems naturally remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis and then store the gases in plant tissues in the ground. Ryan's Forest, Littlefield Woods on Chebeague with their abundant healthy forests are examples of our carbon storage areas. So Stacy helped me figure out this. Roughly 4,200 metric tons of carbon are stored in our 1,200 acres. So what does that mean? Well, she looked it up. And it's basically equivalent to 1,000 gasoline-powered passenger vehicles driven for 1 year, or 548 homes' energy use for 1 year. So that's a big deal. The next one is filtering and absorbing water. When natural areas are developed, they become impervious, and this impacts flooding and erosion increases. In contrast, places that are protected, that have diverse plant cover, filters water, slows water, and prevents erosion and runoff. As we've seen with the increased intensity of the storms, not only on Chebeague Island, but also here in Cumberland with our streams, the impervious areas can be a problem. And so we need more natural places to absorb these massive storms that are happening and becoming more frequent. So we protect wetlands, forests, shorelines, and the benefits of that are that it absorbs and filters stormwater and runoff. Some of our conserved lands on Chebeague help protect the aquifer that Maya was talking about. So if Chebeague was fully developed, it would put stress the aquifer. So we're trying to protect the forested center of the island to provide filtration areas for that, to maintain the water quality for the island. Next one is providing easy access to the outdoors. So land conservation makes it easier for people to get outside and enjoy nature. We have properties within a 5-minute drive of everybody in our community. So that's pretty cool. The more we're outdoors, and the more connected we feel to the natural world. And as we saw during COVID, nature provides mental and physical benefits to us as individuals, but also resilience for our communities. And the last one we have is enabling local food production and protecting local soils. So CCLT has protected 2 working farms in Cumberland that provide local food to our community. And it's important to buy our food locally instead of from the grocery store after it's been shipped all the way from California. So not only are we helping the planet when we do that and our community, but we're also supporting our local businesses in town. And those businesses have been using sustainable farming techniques such as rotational grazing, agroforestry, and the farms nurture our soils. We also have protected several properties that provide hay to support the local farms, so that's also an important part of what we do. And one of the examples that we have is one of our most recent projects, which is Longwoods Preserve on Route 9, and that parcel is a working farm. It has a farm-to-table restaurant and trails for recreation. So it really is the whole package. I hope you've taken a chance to walk around out there, have dinner there. We've enjoyed working with the landowners to help them meet the vision of conservation and local agriculture merging together. And they've been doing a great job. So we're excited to see how that evolves even more. Lastly is how can you help us make a difference? You can volunteer to do trail work. That's my son, who's a senior. They just built a bridge this week. You can steward one of our properties. So we have, for each of our properties, we have a steward that adopts the property, monitors it once a year, checks on it, helps us manage it if there are trees down. Or you can join one of our committees. We had, as you know, the storms this spring really made a mess of our trails, and we made a call out to our volunteers to help us clear some of the trails, and we had tons of people. We got Knights Pond, Greely Woods, Rhines Forest, and Broad Cove all cleared in 1 week. So we rely on your help. We are a small staff, so it's great. Come to one of our events. We have lots of really fun natural resource and education events. You can also think about, I don't have this one up here, but you might want to conserve your own land. So if you have a large parcel that you think might be beneficial to protect, we'd be happy to talk with you about that. And you can also make a donation to support the work that we're doing or become a business partner. And definitely stay in touch. I think, as you probably figured out from tonight, there's a lot going on in our communities. So trying to, follow us on Facebook or e-news and follow the town's work as well, then you'll be more in tune with what's happening, and we'd love for you to be a part of what we're doing. So that's it for us, but we're happy to open to questions, and I'll be sitting back up there so we can address them all together.
Do we see efforts in many other communities as this raised the effort here in Cumberland?
The question was, are other towns doing a great job like us? I would say we're on the forefront. Wouldn't you, Denny?
Well, I'm the chair of the committee, so I agree with you. But I do think we got an early start, and it was, to be honest, it was like pushing through an open door. There was a lot of desire to get something done, and so I feel that there's a lot of momentum. And of course, the partnership with CCLT is critical because natural systems are so important to the solution of our town in Cumberland and also the state of Maine. So they need to be in hand in glove.
And a lot of towns are now taking on climate action plans. So like we're a little bit ahead of Chebeague, but North Yarmouth has just started theirs, and I think Yarmouth just passed theirs. So we all need to be learning from each other. We don't have to recreate the wheel in every town. So that was part of the purpose of tonight as well, is just to share what's worked for us and hopefully give people a pathway to follow what we've done. Any other questions?
Danny, you talked about everyone eating vegan would reduce farm emissions, I guess, by 75%. Is that why the flagellates can cause, basically?
Could you just repeat the last part of that?
All eating vegan.
Yeah.
All of the vegan. Then the emissions, I think, you're saying, from farms would be reduced by 75%.
No, the data there was and this is just to put it out there as a point of reference, but we would require 70% less land to grow the food that we eat if we all ate vegan.
Thank you.
Yeah. And our farmland in the United States is curious in that regard. I think it's almost 30% of our corn land is used to produce ethanol to run cars. So it's not food at all. Point being that I'm sort of convinced that with appropriate attention to food waste and best practices, we probably won't run out of farmland in the near future, which is comforting in me anyway. Thanks, Pete. Yep.
A friend of mine told me that, sorry, I'm stuck on this. It seems cool. A friend of mine told me that they're vegan. They said that if everyone went vegan, then a huge problem with cow flatulence would go away. Is that a big
A huge problem with what? Sorry.
cow?
Oh, yeah, that's right. No, I got you. Yeah. Methane. You mean methane? Yeah, no, that's true. The sheep. Yeah.
I have a paper prepared by an engineer that was working for me about how much methane in tons per year from cow flatulence in the United States based on data from livestock. I'll provide that to Denny and we'll be able to share it. It was asked of an executive of a company that bought our company, and he said, "Oh, you're the air people. You do what about cow farts?" He called it. So we had a couple engineers prepare a paper based on, you know, you have to do all the accounting, and you have to take, you know, affect all the farming, but we do have figures for that. Have to, mind you, it's like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, but there's data behind it. There's no denying that.
Yeah. Yeah, both, I used to raise sheep, so same thing. Ruminants, you know, they can digest grass by ruminating in their stomachs, but they burp methane. And methane is, while it's up there, it doesn't last as long as carbon dioxide. You know, it basically dissipates and turns into carbon dioxide after about 12 years, but during those 12 years, it's about 10 times more heat protecting and part of the temperature problem that we're having.
Danny, I was wondering if you could give an update on efforts to provide solar panels for the school district,
Sure.
as well as you talk about whether the schools are doing composting and an update on that.
Yeah, the question was, what's up with the school department? And they're part of our climate action plan. They, the solar field we have out here for the town is a little under 1 meg or a megawatt. The school is going to need about 2 megawatts, 2+ megawatts for its load. So it's entered into an agreement with Revision Energy to develop probably an out-of-town solar farm, which you can do as long as it's on the Central Maine Power Grid. Although possibly, you know, the Drown Road setup here that we have could be a possibility. But in any case, that's in the mix, and we're hopefully that'll be coming to fruition in a year or two. The larger projects are a little slower to get done through the through the Maine DEP because there's a waiting line, but that's definitely on the works. And one of the benefits, of course, you know, you reduce carbon emissions, but also it's a lot cheaper. Solar developed is probably, I would say, they'll probably save, the district will probably save maybe 5 or 10 cents a kilowatt hour if they generate it themselves and borrow money to do it with. So that's very much on the agenda. And part of it would involve some of the school roofs. It turns out that the middle school is the only roof that makes sense to put carbon. So part of the project would be that, but it's not going to be big enough to do other than, it would be important, but not big enough. Does that answer your question?
And composting?
Excuse me?
Composting.
Oh, composting at the school, yeah. Right, there is a project going on right now that Scott Poulin is, I'm on the committee, and that is to divert food waste that's coming out of the cafeteria into composting. And the plan is to begin to introduce that next year. We have, the group consists of a number of the school staff, some students, also Garbage to Garden, which would be the vendor. They pick up the food waste. You know, 2,100 kids have you know, breakfast and lunch every day at you know, at our schools, so it's a lot of compost. The challenge will be getting the kids to separate it out, because unless they can separate it out without putting in the plastic spoons, and so that'll be a little extra work on the part of the school staff, but that's the commitment to try to get it done. Not on the climate action plan at this point. Is my mic still on?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Plastics is another world totally, you know, we're trying to sort it out through the Eco Maine drop, but there's a little bit of discouragement there. I don't know if you look at the little number on the box of the stuff that you get at home. It's very difficult to find. We had to get a magnifying glass for it, but they rank them 1 to 7. And really, only 1 and 2 get recycled. There isn't any outlet for. So EcoMaine will say they take it, but they only can separate out the 1 and 2, and they do get rid of it in that way, and the rest of it just gets burned up. Now that makes me worry a little bit about, because that burning plastic, it creates carbon emissions, and whereas landfilling plastics, keeps it there forever. So we're mulling, what we might do at the Climate Action Team on that question. And single-use plastic bags are another hassle too. So big problem, and growing fast. It's a very fast growing. About half the plastic originated in the world is for packaging. Yeah.
Have you looked into, there's a single-use, forks and spoons and stuff that are compostable, that are, basically made out of like cellulose or cornstarch. So that could be a solution to that problem.
Yeah. I think that the school department, I should be more up to speed. The school department is adopting some of those, trying to move away from plastic for their plates. All of those are great ideas. Yeah, they need to be implemented. Getting it into the individual homes is more of a challenge because that's their own decision. But hopefully education will lead the way there.
I think there's any study being done why there is so much waste product at the schools? I mean, is it because of the type of food? Is it because they have a large choice and they choose and then they don't eat it all? Does anyone have an idea of why there is such a large percentage of food waste at the schools?
Have not studied. I don't think we necessarily feel at this point that the students are wasting more than the average, but there's an interesting question of if you can get them to separate it, then they might more attention to why I'm throwing away that peanut butter and why didn't I eat it. That's the idea. But no, we haven't done any studies of the flow, but we will next year because we have to understand what's going into the wasteland, and we'll know better about what's going on. Right now, all of that is just going to EcoMaine and being burned,
Yes.
including the food waste.
The other, about the compostable, like knives, forks, we were at Audubon yesterday with a little thing, and we were using all compostable in silverware, or, utensils.
Yeah.
They're very costly. So, I mean, you've got to consider that, also, especially in school budget, but,
Right.
knowing the percentage of kids that eat that, et cetera. But they are, if the price could come down on them, that would be great, but.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to tackle it next year and really get into it.
I wonder about the sustainability curriculum that they have in the K through 12 and whether the food waste piece is incorporated into that curriculum so that they can take that into the cafeteria with them when they're.
Yeah, I don't know the curriculum to that level of detail, but there is a K-5, K-12 series about climate change and sustainability that everyone takes pretty seriously. The staff does, but that'll be something to add to encourage, particularly kids. If you can get them going in kindergarten and second grade, then they carry on their good ideas to. As you know, my son-in-law is a teacher at the Falmouth Middle School, and they do have a waste aversion that's been there a number of years, and the kids have gotten into the habit of it. So it can be done. Yeah.
Kind of a note on that, I don't remember exactly what school board meeting it was, but there was a meeting where they had a presentation from the cafeteria staff,
Yeah.
and they had mentioned, because I remember how strange it was, that at least the Mabley Wilson kids, they have to provide them a certain amount of each food group at every meal, even if they won't eat it. So the kids have to take an amount of stuff, and so then they have to waste it if they don't eat it, and that's by law, as part of shared services or something.
Yeah, Denise is making the point that there's a, there's a lot of oversight into what goes on in the school cafeteria. The state has a set of rules and regulations, and so you're somewhat limited by that. And the intention, of course, is for nutritional purposes, but you wind up, the kiddos wind up with things that look nutritional, but they don't want to eat it, so it goes in the food waste, broccoli and other fun sticks. Yeah, go ahead, Denise.
Kind of related to cow parts, but I've been seeing so many articles about how tons of methane emissions out of landfills from food waste combined with, trash. And I know a lot of us use garbage to garden and can do kind of like home-based composting, which is more limited in what you can do, but has the town that you know of ever thought of doing actual composting, not just brush dump type composting, like home food waste?
He's making the point is that improperly completed landfills can result in a lot of methane because you have an anaerobic process going on under the soil. I understand that modern well-built landfills can eliminate that problem, so there is no methane emissions from a properly built. Some of it can be drawn out and turned into electricity. Some of it can just be suppressed. The question of can we add food waste to our own composting facility, which we have down here, and the answer is yes. And actually, Chris Bolduck has done a couple of trials with Garbage to Garden to see if that stream of food waste coming from our households could be kept in Cumberland and composted up with the brush, and it would improve the quality because food waste is a very high value compost, or becomes very high quality compost. So all that's in the works. Very interesting. Yeah.
So in your figure of reaching net zero for Cumberland, you didn't talk about it, but in there was forest carbon offset. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the question is, in our bar chart that showed the overall carbon footprint of Cumberland households coming down involved forest carbon offsets. This is going to be kind of a long-winded answer. I apologize, but one of the great things about forests, and particularly the ones here, because they're hardwood forests typically in Cumberland, and they're older, they're sequestering a lot of carbon, like 3 to 4 tons a year. We know that because our forester has actually done the measurements at our town forest. So we know that number. Now, if you take that up to 1,000 acres that we own, that's 4,000 tons of CO2 that's being sequestered annually, which is more than we're emitting both at the school and the town. And so the idea was, well, we're in effect, sequestering more than we need, and could we make that available in some sort of offset to our residents? So that they, if they're going to be flying somewhere and want to buy a carbon offset, we could say, here, you can take an acre and we'll set it aside for you, and that'll be 5 tons and for a lower price. We've kind of backed off on that a little bit because the whole question of forest carbon offsets, as you probably know, is being revisited right now, and because there was some excesses and improper projects. So I think we're going to have that on hold for a while. Bottom line is, though, the forests, and Penny made this point here, if we can have 4,000 acres under conservation where the trees are mostly growing, that's a very large number of tons that's being sequestered here in relationship to our human activities. So it's a great benefit.
Subdivision, and that 50% of the land around it was conserved. Is that a policy, like a townwide policy with new developments, or does it vary by the development?
Yeah, the question is the Idlewood subdivision shows open space around it, and how did that work? As it turned out, that was a one-off deal, and we lived on Range Road. My neighbors will probably say we were all a little agitated about that at the time. Do you remember? We came down to these meetings of what's going on. And it turned out, I think, quite well as an example, because we you know, basically the visual impact on Range Road has been unaffected. We have it's all conserved, and it's just a road going in. So it was a great result. So we've built on that over the years, and now we have a formal conservation subdivision ordinance, which has been in effect for about a year. And that requires that each developer needs to put aside 50% of their open space, land and open space, in return for a lot size reduction. And I'll just give you one example of one that's right before us right now. On the Harris Road, which has a beautiful forest and very good up on the south side, a lot of very prime farmland, we call it. They're coming in with a 25-acre project, and 10 acres will be set aside as open space, and it's going to be prime farmland. And that'll be in perpetuity. And the developer will have to find some group, whether it be CCLT or the homeowners association or somebody else, sometimes they deed it directly to the town, that is going to stay as open space for a long time. And so one of the big engines behind our getting this next 800 acres to get up to 30% are just going to be the natural developments. That'll add 10, a bigger development will add 20, and those will increase over the years and have a big impact. Yeah, Denise. Yeah.
Conservation subdivisions, is there any say in making that land contiguous, or kind of making them put it in such a way that abutting developments will continue kind of that contiguous?
Yeah, part of the plan there is they have to recognize any trails that are coming through already. And so if there's an abutting trail that goes through, then that has to be part of the open space. Prime farmland has to be considered. And so there's quite a lot of power in that. There's an example of that that not many people know about, and that's up off Blanchard Road Extension on the banks of the west branch of the Piscataqua River, which is a beautiful little river that runs back in there. That we own some of the land there. We own the land around West Branch subdivision, and you can actually walk there. It's a beautiful walk, and it's an example, I believe, of one of our old growth forests that's still there. There's a couple of pine trees that must be, they're just gigantic. So that's coming together as a trail system as a result of two neighboring subdivisions that have just been completed. One, the town got the deed to 6 acres that's on that same trail, and Blanchard Oaks, which hasn't been completed, similar. So there'll be a trail now from that Blanchard Oaks subdivision up and around and down through the branch of the West Piscataqua River back in. So that would be an example of how just putting the pieces, but this is one of the Lands and Conservation's duties, is to comment on subdivisions, and we try to point out where possible whether these connections you're referring to are important.
Yeah, I will add that it is important to try and connect them, because we have a lot of random spaces all across town. It's not as good as having connected spaces. So the more that we can do that, and that will be something that we would recommend and the town would recommend to a developer.
I was thinking of this when you were talking about trail connectivity for wildlife. So a personal example there on Range Road. We have a property on Range Road that runs down to the Mill Brook. And coming up my pasture a couple months ago was a cow moose coming up from Mill Brook, and she was on the move. So she came up from Mill Brook and got up to Range Road and said, "Oh, this is a really busy highway," So she looked at it for a while, and the traffic is kind of intense down Range Road parts of the day, and so she turned around and went back down to Mill Brook and back up to Ryan's Forest, where the trails are connected. Otherwise, she wouldn't have made it, the next step. So that was kind of, trail connectivity in action. And I haven't seen many mooses, or is that the plural? I haven't seen many moose on my land over the years, and hopefully we'll see more because of these trail connections.
Yes, James?
Danny, I'm wondering if you think it would be fiscally or politically feasible to have the town provide incentives for particularly households, given that we show that households are the biggest emissions category in town, and in that it's transportation and energy. Do you think it would be possible or wise for the town to think about offering additional incentives for accelerating people?
Yeah, well, as you know, neighboring towns have done this. South Portland has a very active program, and we have a pilot that I hope is in the survive the budget process. I haven't caught up with the town budget, which is for $1,000 to provide $100 incentives to people that adopt heat pumps in this year. And so, yeah, I think there's a big way for, without too much money, to nudge people to make these kind of decisions. And I think the council would be open to it. I know the LCC. We've talked about this, Dave. I think I forgot to repeat the question is: would the town provide funds to incentivize people to buy a EV or do a heat pump, that kind of thing, do solar panels? So.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciated you coming this evening and for the interesting discussion that we had. I'm glad there were lots of questions. And definitely join some of the work that we're doing or do some things in your own home. We appreciate it. Everything makes a difference. Thank you.
And if anyone wants to see the breakdown of the municipal or community greenhouse gas emissions sectors on Chebeague, I'm happy to show you that as well.